Powered by Rep Media and in partnership with TSN, this is Season 6 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Tim Hortons. Now, Ray, listen up. A new menu item has arrived to start your new year right.
Okay,
spinach and feta savory egg pastry. It's baked fresh daily. It's served warm, stuffed with eggs, spinach, and, of course, feta, all in a buttery, flaky crust. Have I got you yet, Ray? Buttery, flaky crust.
Yeah, in egg any kind of egg sandwich in.
Part of the Tim Selects everyday value menu, including the everything bagel and cream cheese. Love that. 4 cheese omelet bites. Get those on the fly. You can't beat them. You know, they're one-timers. You can drive and you can eat the omelet bites. Yeah. And red pepper and Swiss savory pinwheels, which I was a little wary of initially. I thought, I don't know if I'm going to like that. You know, when it comes to the pinwheels and Swiss and savory and everything, red pepper mixed in, delicious. Delicious. Love it all. And the best part of it, Ray, under $3. Like, come on, what can you get today? $2.99. Always at Tim Hortons. Okay, Ray, a weird question. We're not afraid to cross the lines, ethically speaking. We stay in the lines, but every once in a while we cross. Yeah.
What
do you
got?
dream? Are you a dreamer? Are you a dreamer? No. Do you wake up in the morning and go, oh, no, or, oh, what a dream? No?
Never. I remember one dream from like 2006, and I haven't remembered one since. So I don't know.
I'm kind of the same.
Cammy remembers, like she remembers. She's like, oh yeah, I got this dreaming about this, and but no, I don't remember.
So we should get a sleep expert, not on the pod, but maybe I'll do a little bit of research during some downtime, whenever that is, and find out what that tells us. When one person dreams, vividly recalls what the dream was about, and then the other, your case, my case, maybe a piece of it, but I can't put those pieces together. The reason I bring it up, we're not, a sleep type podcast. We've had sleepy podcasts, but that's not what our focus.
I was just going to say, I disagree with you.
8:09 a.m. Eastern time. Let the record show Tuesday, January 7th, as we record this pod. I get a text from James Duthie. James says, quote, just wanted to say congrats. In my dream last night, we played a Pro-Am. Well, actually, you played, and I caddied, and you were actually against the pros. And you won by a shot, and we won Jeeps. So I appreciate you. So I follow up quick, and I'm like, was it a chip in or a long putt? He goes, well, I believe you finished 23 under, which is pretty remarkable in an 18-hole event. He goes, also, I was trying to negotiate cash instead of the Jeeps because neither of us wanted them. They were 2-year leases. They were only going to give us $5,000 each, and then I woke up. Like, who? Like, that's as vivid and detailed as it gets.
Yeah, but don't you remember, like, over the years, he's had a few dreams and, like, very creative things that sometimes the pieces don't match. And then he'll be like, oh, I got a story. And he tells his story. Like, I think creative people, they must have this crazy pinwheel that spins around, right? And Duthie does. Like, just think of all the goofy crap we've done over the years because he's thought of something. And you're like, how did you even think of that? So this doesn't surprise me at all. Congratulations, by the way. That's some good playing.
It's an extraordinary dream, starting with me beating the pros by a shot. I mean, come on. Anyway, I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
Yeah, it's
Normally,
a good
one. We kind of start the podcast with some lighthearted stuff. Hey, what'd you do this weekend? What's going on? All that. But I think this is a first. The James Duthie dream starting off the Ray and Dregs podcast.
I think he could probably contribute more of that because I bet you he has more. I bet you he does.
We're going to inject that into some of our intermissions, keep them more entertaining. All right, time for the Tim Hortons headlines. And, we're basically now, for the most part, at the halfway point of the regular season. And we'll get into, some of the what would you do GM stuff a little bit later in headlines. But I do want to look at an all-Canadian matchup last night. And I guess coincidentally, the Vancouver Canucks involved. They seem to be involved in everything, speculation included, right? So the Montreal Canadiens host the Vancouver Canadiens last night as the Canucks
It would be the Vancouver Canucks. It'd be the Vancouver Canucks.
What did I say? Vancouver Canadiens?
Yeah, that's a baseball team. Yeah, they weren't playing last night.
Yeah, well, let's make the 2-1. So the Montreal Canadiens hosting the Vancouver Canucks. Pretty good hockey game by all accounts. It was fun to watch. So I'm going to start with Montreal. Captain Nick Suzuki with 3 points in that one, Ray, including the overtime winner with 48 seconds to give the Canadiens the edge over Vancouver. So for the moment, we look at the Eastern Conference standings and you see Ottawa and the Pittsburgh Penguins are below that cut line, the wild card spot. And Montreal is in a wild card spot. I mean, really a remarkable and well-timed push by the Habs here.
Well, if we go back to just before that push, it was a train wreck. They were giving up 5 goals a game. They were all over the place in the way that they were playing. It felt like they might have to have some kind of move to sort of bump everybody back on course. Yeah. And then they went on that road trip, and I think in the last 10 games, the two games they've lost have been to Columbus and Chicago. They beat Vegas, they beat Colorado. They've been on a really good run. When I watch a really young team, you know how you think back to your past or whatever. I think back to when in Hartford, where we started to be a team that was on the move. We had a really good team, and I know people Hartford, whatever. It was 30 years ago. But we had Ronnie Francis and Kevin Dineen and Al Samuelson and, myself and Dean Evison. And we were all young, and we played kind of a free and wild way because we were young. You have no fear. Yeah. You make a mistake, you're like, screw it. I made a mistake. You just go play. You don't have all these things that nag at you yet that you get older in your career. When I was watching Montreal last night, I was like, that's what they are. They give up a goal and then they just go and attack. And they give up another one and then they go and attack. And obviously they're confident, right? They feel good about themselves last night, or watching them play last night. They feel good about themselves. I wasn't, I'm not so sure that I had seen, I'd really focused in on Lane Hutson much. I watch him, but man, that kid can scoot around the ice, and he's got an escape ability to him. So here's the thing I'll say about that. I wanted to, as I was watching, I was thinking about small players. You can't be small and light unless you're an extremely good skater. And I don't mean fast, I mean agile. You've got to be able to avoid people. And when I mean, Hudson's a great skater, but when I watch him, it's his agility. He never seems to be in a bad place. Even when he's boxed in, now he got shoved out of the way on one goal. That's going to happen to, a smaller D once in a while, but man, he was fun to watch last night. I was entertained watching that kid play.
Well, and just to interject, as part of the summary of that game last night, and I mean, it speaks to the impression that Lane Hutson is making, not just in Montreal, but on the National Hockey League. So he now has 30 points in 42 NHL games, the fastest Canadiens defenseman to reach 30 points, surpassing Chris Chelios, Ray, who got his 30th point in his 45th game. And Hutson now has 8 multi-point games this season. So this kid is dynamic and smart, right? So
yeah, he it's funny, his brother looked exactly the same in the junior tournament.
He did, didn't he? And he's a bit bigger. Man. He's just a whisker bigger than Lane, but Washington Capitals look like they've got a good piece there.
Well, yeah, and then they can join that with Ryan Leonard. That kid's a player.
Couldn't take my eyes off that kid, right?
If Ryan Leonard, when his college season is over, he's going to be in the Capitals lineup 7 minutes later.
No,
because that's how long it's going to take to get a flight. That freaking kid is a player, man.
All right, back to Montreal. So does a push like this, and I guess I'm going to answer my own question, but I want your input here. Like a push like this can fool you a little bit too, can it, as a GM?
Sure.
Because you're looking at it and you're going, okay, geez, you're right. I mean, this team bends, but they don't break, and their confidence is high, and they'll find a way to respond, and they're winning games, and maybe they always shouldn't, all of that. So let's go out and get them some help. Mistakes are made when you do that. So which side of the fence, if you're Kent Hughes, are you leaning on? Are you buying what you're seeing right now? And do you look for some experience, some affordable help to kind of boost, if not reward, this team?
Not yet. I'm just letting it play out right now. The things are going well. I'm not going to bring anybody in or delete anybody to something that's going well. If I get right around the Four Nations, which will then be, once they come out of the Four Nations, it'll be, I think it's 3 weeks to the deadline. If going into the Four Nations, the Canadians are right in this place, then I'm going to bring in some help.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna blow out a top end prospect, right? Like I'm not gonna do that unless you're from such a position of strength that, like, maybe they could afford to, to move a prospect D.
Right.
But I'm not gonna make some crazy bold move because I don't think the team's quite there yet. But it would be nice that if you could stay in it and maybe you do make a real late run to the playoffs, right?
Sure.
Like maybe you do. Okay, here's the type of trade a team like that Montreal has made in the past. So I was following. I'm like, where did they get? I don't remember where they got Heineman from. I know he came from Calgary, but I don't think he got drafted there. So I go check it out. Second round pick by Florida. He's got 10 goals, by the way. So he's a second round pick by Florida. He gets traded from Florida to Calgary in the Sam Bennett deal. He gets traded to Montreal in the Toffoli deal. So he's just like a young piece that nobody really notices in the and he's big and he's a good player. He's got 10 goals. And I'm like, oh, and that was a player. These trades get made all the time, and that's just a guy.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a guy in the trade. And Montreal's been able to do that. I think now they're in the position where they can add something, but not deleting any of their prospect pool, any of their A prospects. I don't think they have to do that.
All right. Other side, the equation on Monday night, the Vancouver Canucks. JT Miller with 2 goals. Quinn Hughes made his return from injury. Thankfully, if you're Rick Tocchet and the Vancouver Canucks. So what does the eye test tell you here, Ray? I mean, you keep a close watch on the Vancouver Canucks. When healthy, does this group have the makeup, as is, to battle with some of the power in the West? Or, as we seem to talk about every podcast, does it just feel like some form of change, significant or otherwise, is imminent at this point?
There's not been 1 week of peace in Vancouver this summer, or from the summer on, whether it was Dakota Joshua getting diagnosed with cancer, to Demko's knee, to Miller not being in training camp, to Pettersson's slow start, to Miller leaving the team for 10 games, the drama around Pettersson and Miller. Pettersson goes out again, Hughes goes out. Like, it's always something. It feels like they're pushing a boulder uphill. Like that's what it feels like. Last night I'm watching the game and I'm like, you know what? If Pettersson's in the game, they probably win last night. That was my feeling. I mean, it was 4-4. I'm like, they probably win. Somewhere along the line, there's probably a difference made in the game. The last 2 goals, like the Doc goal deflects off of Myers and goes in. The tying goal came from the corner and deflected off of Hughes's feet. And you're like, it just feels like that's the way the thing is going to go. So it does feel like there is some change coming, and everybody can speculate and be wrong. Or this is the thing with speculation: if you just keep throwing names out there enough, eventually you're going to be right. And like,
That's
eventually
fair.
you're going to get it right. except
Yeah.
when you're wrong, nobody ever says, "Oh, I was wrong."
Right.
Like I don't think they get to the Four Nations without a deal. Like it just feels like that to me. Like it feels like the Rangers won't get to the deadline, like to the Four Nations, without another deal.
Yeah.
I don't know if they will, but it feels like those are two teams that you can maybe think of and go, yeah, I could see that between now and then. Because the
Mm.
deadline, as I said, is 3 weeks past the Four Nations final. So I'm like, Miller was great last night. He was
Yeah.
great last night.
Yeah.
They're thrilled with the progress of Lecker-Mackey. And man, you saw that kid can shoot the puck. He's got 2 goals in the
Absolute
NHL.
rocket.
Both of them rockets. Both of them same shot, same area on the ice. Now he got thumped by Caden Gooley in the first couple of minutes, and I think that's really important because he got crushed and he had a goal and an assist after. Like that
Yeah.
tells me that he can, because Gooley was running around early and he was impressive. Gooley was. So
Yeah.
there's like, they're not a young team. They're a team for now, but they're a team that's now trying to incorporate some young pieces because they've got all these injuries. Joshua's out again. It's like it never stops. It must be exhausting. It really is. And I'm
Yeah.
going to tie him again to the Rangers. I don't know if you saw Drake's the Sunday game against Chicago.
Yeah.
And
Bits of it. Yeah.
so Vinny Trocheck did an interview before the game, and man, I see a lot of myself in Trocheck. You know, like he's feisty and
Sure he is. Yeah.
and he's a energy always there. And they asked him before the game. Leah Hextall asked him about what can be done. He goes, well, and he just had this like exhausted answer, right? It's in warm up, and he goes
Yeah.
something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, I'll let you know when I get the answer. I mean, like, I don't know, like maybe have a better forecheck and like they're just exhausted. Losing
Yeah.
is exhausting. And so again, that's where I tie the Rangers and the Canucks. And I'm like,
Yeah.
they just seem exhausted and they need something good to happen to turn. And like you said, you're halfway through the year, man. You better turn fast.
So speaking of turning, why don't we'll flip over to some of the other teams because you're right. I mean, every day there's going to be something new that's swirling around the Vancouver Canucks, and does it, connect the New York Rangers? Does it connect some of the other teams, Carolina, Detroit, the Islanders? I mean, there's a rumor for every team that connects back to either Miller or Elias Pettersson. But who among the top teams in the National Hockey League do you see making significant moves? I'm always drawn to Kelly McCrimmon and the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas has cap room, and McCrimmon is one of those general managers who, the Jack Eichel trade, it was significant, of course. There was all sorts of drama around it, out of Buffalo, et cetera. But that was a trade that was manufactured over months. So Kelly does a lot of his work, as most general managers do, way back when. You plant the seed, and then you just see how it comes together. So would you start there with Vegas? I mean, what is the likelihood of McCrimmon taking another swing with cap space and probably a bit of need up front, if not in other areas?
103%. Like Kelly with cap space and a need is like a free day in the summer that I could go play golf, and I'm going to say I could go or not. Of course I'm going to play. Like,
Yeah.
there's no, like, Vegas is statistically, I think they're one of the top 2 teams, right? They might be 1, they might be 2 at this point. Vegas is never in it, never in any season in their short history. They're never in any season to be a participant. They don't want that ribbon. And
No.
so yes, 100%. And so they'll identify the need that becomes most specific, and then they can go attack it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say they're they're 100% in the market.
All right. Winnipeg, again, top team in the National Hockey League this year.
Yep.
It feels like Cheveldayoff is going to have to protect a first-round draft pick at some point here. Like the Toffoli trade did not work out in Winnipeg. It just didn't. I mean, that happens, right? So if there's that hockey deal, like, of course, everybody wants to make a hockey deal. Every manager says it has to be a hockey trade. I get that too. But in a perfect world, Winnipeg, I think, is going to shop. They're going to want to add a top 4 defense, like so many contending teams. Maybe the number 2 center, although I think Mestikov has handled that role pretty well, I think, for the most part. So if Winnipeg is going to improve in those areas or bring in that specific help, it's going to be interesting to see how Chevy pulls it off. But, is that wishful thinking, or do you think, those are 2 areas that he should be looking at?
Well, when you're saying protecting the first rounder, I think that's wishful thinking. And the reason I do is when you talk about a hockey trade, that means somebody off your roster for somebody, in my definition, it means somebody off your roster for somebody off their roster, whoever they is. You're going so well. Why are you going to dig into your own roster? You create a little bit of a hole to replace a hole somewhere else. Unless you've got somebody internally that can fill that deletion. That's where the draft picks become so valuable. But here's the thing. There's not going to be many years where Winnipeg or any other team is sitting in the top 5 of the league.
Right.
Like, protect your first round pick somewhere else. I mean, if you can get it done, great. Without it, that'd be awesome. But I don't think Chevy's in the position right now to be unduly cautious. I'm telling you, Dregs, I've thought of this so much since we've had Billy Guerin on. And Billy said, I've referenced it, I think, on one podcast already, but he said, you don't go in, he said he learned this from Jim Rutherford, don't go in trying to win a deal, go in to make the deal, make a fair deal. So if Cheveldayoff or McCrimmon or Alvin or whoever is trying to win the deal, they probably won't make it. And then you got the team you got. I just don't think those teams are going to stand there.
Yeah.
And so you make the best deal you can, and some work out, some don't. Right. And, but the answer to every question never asked is no. And so if you don't make a move to improve your team when you're that good, then you just have to hope it's enough. Like, Nemestikov's done a really nice job. Can he hold that position in the toughest time of the year? When the rink starts to shrink. Right. Is he going to be able to do that? And I know they want a D, and I see it, but I would be a little nervous that teams are going to just collapse around Scheifele, and they're going to need something a little more in that spot. Yeah. Except they might look at it and go, what's available isn't a little more. It's kind of the same. And he's done a really nice job. He really has. Yeah.
Where would you put Scott Laughton of the Philadelphia Flyers, in the mix here? Because I think that Danny Briere, as much as he would prefer not to trade Scott Laughton, he's great with their young guys, and Philadelphia is trying to turn a page there. If somebody lobs a first round pick, which isn't insignificant here, let's be honest. Like, not many managers just want to throw away their first round picks. Far from it. Would you give a first for Scott Laughton, and where would he fit? Because there's so many teams that need help at center. Right. And I can think of the 3 Canadian teams: Winnipeg, Vancouver, if they make that move. Toronto is in the market for a centerman. Calgary's in the market. Like, go down the list. Where does Laughton fit?
I think they will get that pick for him. Because just for what you mentioned, just off the top of your head, you name 4 teams. Yeah. So if I call and I say, hey, Dregs, I got a second round pick, he's like, yeah, good one. And you say, good one. I've got a first from this other team. And then you got to decide. And so Laughton to me is at his spot, he's a 3 center. He's a really good penalty killer, really a smart player. I think earlier in his career, people thought there might be like more offense there, like
Right.
like second line offense. At this point, I think him in a third role is really good. I see Toronto's going to do something. They're having too good a year,
Yeah.
and the fact that they're doing it in the way that they are. I mean, take out Matthews returning and getting 5 points, but or 4 points, and Marner had 5, and Nyes had 3.
Yeah.
Like for the most part, it's a different way. And I thought they were on this way. They lost Game 7, 2-1 in overtime to Boston.
Yeah.
And then Craig Berube comes in. And the one thing about that move was there was no wonderment how the Leafs were going to try to play under Berube. Like everybody, but he got named. Every player knew this is how we're going to have to play. And isn't it amazing what 8 months can do? Leafs lose. You got to break up the core. I thought there's no way they can bring that group back again. Like, again?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And now you're like, they're one of the best 5 teams in the league.
Yeah.
And really, they didn't make any earth-shattering move. The move they make, Chris Tanev, has been terrific for them, right?
Yeah.
Like, so, but Laughton to Toronto makes a lot of sense. But Laughton, I don't. It's going to be hard for Briere to hold on to him, I think.
Agreed.
Because I think there's going to be enough competing bids that he's going to get what he wants.
Let's wrap up the Tim Hortons headlines with just maybe a sneaky big trade player. You name a team, maybe we agree on the same team. I don't know. And then, let's not put a timeline. It could happen this week. It could happen March 7th, the NHL trade deadline. I'm looking at the Carolina Hurricanes as a sneaky big trade player. How about you?
That's a good one. And the reason being for me is that they play in such a way. It's like they can't quite get over that hill, but they're going to be there every year. So they're with the cap space they have. It feels like they need another offensive piece.
Yeah.
Right. And to stay with the very best of the East, because is anybody running away and you go, oh my gosh, that team in the East that's the best.
Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, 1 week it's Florida and you go, yeah, I can see, but Florida's going to add a D, I think, at some point. Although when we say they're going to add a D, Kenny Holland always said there is no store that you can go and buy a D from.
Yeah.
Like eventually you run out. You run out.
Yeah.
Like there's like, and that's how teams get first round picks for very average defensemen. But like 1 week Florida's the best. 1 week Toronto's the best. Oh, gee, look at that. That was a really great month for New Jersey. And now here's Carolina. They're always kind of there. So I would agree with Carolina. I do think San Jose's got one big move in them. And if you have not been watching San Jose, take 2 minutes and watch them, because they're fun. I mean, they don't always defend really well, but Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith playing together, like those are fun young players to watch. It's really, but I can see they've turned over a lot of that roster, and I could see something coming their way as they just kind of sit there with their catcher's mitt on and say, just keep throwing me offers, and Mike Greer's going to catch one eventually.
Those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons.
Everyday value with every bite. Say hello to Tim Selects. Starting at only $2.99, try one or try our full lineup of warm, delicious options. Tim Selects, everyday value that's here to stay. Order them on the Tim's app today.
It's time for Tim's.
Ask Ray and Dregs Anything is brought to us by Aecon. With over 150 years in construction industry, Aecon is one of Canada's original leaders in heavy industrial contracting, and they're always looking for great people to join their team. If you or someone you know is looking for work, go to aecon.com and click Join Our Team, and they will connect you to a great job. All right. No Ryan Rishaug. Ryan and Randine are enjoying some quality holiday time. just a little relaxation, kind of a work vacation is how Ryan described it to me. Is there such a thing as a work vacation?
Well, I don't know. He's not here. He's not working that hard.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Well,
who takes a vacation in the middle of the season? He must have a cushy frickin' gig here.
You know what he's got is a good accountant, right? Because he's doing a podcast, Got Your Back. He's helping out with with Ray and Dregs and all that, and submitting the receipts. That's what he's doing.
Oh, you're on the
Corporate
case.
Shenanigans. That's what that is.
My favorite word.
Yeah,
I didn't tell you. I ran into Big Al at a game.
Well, I love Big Al.
So one of Commissioner Bettman's security people is this ginormous ex-policeman. And so Al is just hilarious. And so it was at a Pittsburgh-Philadelphia series. It was wild back in the day. Giroux had run over Crosby. There was fights. And anyway, Al shows up at this one game, and I go, "Hey, Al, what are you doing here?" He goes, "Just making sure there's no shenanigans." And he's got that thick New York accent. Oh, every time I see him, any shenanigans, Al? He goes, "Nothing today." And so, good guy.
Speaking of shenanigans, Jacob in Surrey is asking, Ray, have you ever experienced teammates who had trouble getting along or who flat out, he's using the word hated. I think that's too strong. So dislike one another is how I will say it. How disruptive could it be potentially to a room over the long haul? Obviously, he's asking based on everything that we've read and we've heard about, and that has been commented on by JT Miller and Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes and Rick Tocchet and the Vancouver Canucks. You had to have had to deal with this in your past?
Well, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And, but when I played, there wasn't the media infiltration of the knowledge. Like a lot of times it just died in the room. Two guys didn't like each other. And so they never went to dinner with each other. Here's the thing I don't quite get about this whole thing. At most, unless that time a couple of years ago when they played on the same line, they're on the ice 4 minutes a game together. If you don't get along, don't go for dinner together. Yeah. One guy sits at one end of the bus, one guy sits at the other end of the bus. Don't sit together on the plane. You got your friends, you got your friends. There's guys that go back and forth between the two groups. Like, I don't know, like there's no workplace of great harmony. You know what's great harmony? Winning. When you win, everybody gets along. When you lose, these things will bubble. If they're there, they'll bubble up. So the answer is yes, for sure. I don't think it can. When you say repair, like people say, can it be repaired? To what? To last year? Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Win 8 out of 12, and then things settle back down a bit, or it's going to always be there because people are always going to talk about it. It's never going to go away now.
All right. Thanks to Jacob in Surrey. Terrence in Edmonton, Ray, says, gentlemen, there's lots of chatter about Leon Draisaitl as a Hart Trophy candidate, as there should be.
There should be.
Do you think if he ends up winning this award, that the perceived gap between Leon and Connor McDavid closes even more? And could that potentially affect the dollar figure that Connor McDavid would be commanding in his next contract?
No, because okay, here's how I view this. If we're looking at Draisaitl in this moment, he's in my mind, him and McKinnon are having MVP seasons. You can throw other players into that, but like I think Leon's on a 13-game point streak. He scores every game. Like it's like remarkable. He's having an amazing year. If you're going to pick one or the two, you're like, this is not the norm. As great as Draisaitl's last few years have been, you have to remember back to the playoffs last year. He had a very quiet final series, right? And is that him or is this him? Oh man, he's one of the best 10 players in the league. He's a great player. The difference between Draisaitl and McDavid, I don't think it's shrunk. I think McDavid's just astounding. I think he does things other people just simply can't do. But I will say, McDavid benefits from playing with Draisaitl as Draisaitl benefits from playing with McDavid. They're an amazing pair together. The dollars, I mean, what the hell is the difference? If you save $500,000 here or $500,000 there, maybe that's the difference. But are you going to go to Connor and say, no, we're going to chisel your salary down? Yeah, good luck.
Not happening. No. Yeah. Thanks, Terrence. All right, Ray, we've got 3 minutes before you're on to your next assignment. So we've got to close this quickly.
Got to get going.
Yeah. Zoe in Ottawa says it seems like there are still 8 or 9 teams that are hanging around in the playoff race in the Eastern Conference. You know, a 3 or a 4 game winning streak, and that makes a huge difference, right? And for sure, we're seeing that jockeying happen game in and game out. Of the teams, Ray, currently not in a playoff spot, who would be your dark horse? Repeat, dark horse to make it in the East. And Zoe says, love the podcast. Can't wait for trade talk to heat up even more. So is it Pitt? Is it Ottawa? Is it Columbus, Philadelphia, Detroit? The obvious New York Rangers, Islanders? Who is it, Ray?
Right, like as of this morning, I say it's Detroit because they've got this new coach, Todd McClellan bump. You know, he came in there and he was just giving it to them about just think of this. He's giving it to them about having fun, about just playing. But he's like the first game, he's like, we're a bunch of robots. I like that he didn't try to come in there with, and we both know Todd, like he's not going to come in there with all the answers, but he came in and he's like, we got to enjoy the game again. And the stress of losing, again, earlier we talked about the Canucks and the Rangers. It's exhausting. And he's trying to change that. As of right now, I'm going to pick Detroit, but in a week it might be somebody else.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to play the old birth certificate. I'm going with the Ottawa Senators.
Okay, well, you better get somebody to help Linus Ullmark out, because if Ullmark's not back and playing, if he's not back playing, I don't think they can make it. I think he is a grade A difference maker for them.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Zoe. And thank you to Acon, building what matters to enable future generations to thrive, for pushing us along here on Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. As we wrap, my friend, we're recording Tuesday, January 7th, the morning of, what's your week look like?
Week at home. Friday, I go to Florida. I have Boston and Florida for ABC on Saturday.
Yeah.
And then I come back, and then I've got about 5 weeks where I'm trying not to look at my calendar because I'm just slammed. But hey, it's good stuff. But a week at home. What about you? What do you got?
Back into the grind. It's a good week, right? Coming out of the holidays, back into the insider trading wheel. Tuesday and Thursday, Leafs on Thursday, and then a pretty busy weekend. So I'm actually looking forward to it. I like the rhythm. And I don't travel nearly as much as you. So the rhythm from the home studio keeps the juices flowing. Keeps it going.
That's a pretty good thing. I was up at 3:45 Eastern yesterday to fly home. How's that for your travel?
Yeah.
That's what I think of
That's
that.
no good. Well, enjoy your time at home, buddy.
Thanks, Dregs. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and have a great start to the week. We'll talk to you later this week.
You bet. And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support Ray and Dregs and make this podcast possible. Our title sponsor, Tim Hortons, and thank you to Acon. Until next time, stay safe, everybody.